It happens again. The mail carrier is 3 houses away. Your dog hasn't even seen them yet, but he already knows they're coming. You can see it in his body before a single sound leaves him. The stiffness, the ears, that fixed stare toward the window. And then it starts. Sharp. Relentless. The kind of barking that doesn't sound like communication, it sounds like an alarm that can't find the off switch. You say his name. Nothing. You clap your hands. He glances at you for half a second and goes right back to it. You walk over and say firmly, the way every article told you to quiet. He barks harder. And for a moment, you just stand there, in your own living room, feeling completely powerless over a dog you love. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And if you've been trying to stop this, really trying, for weeks or months, you already know that nothing you've done has made it better. Maybe it's gotten worse. Here's the part no one tells you up front. Some of the things you've been doing to stop the barking are exactly what's been keeping it alive. Not because you're a bad owner. Because the information most people find about this problem points them in the wrong direction from the start. You tried ignoring it. You read somewhere that if you don't react, the behavior dies off on its own. So you sat there, jaw tight, while he worked himself into a frenzy at the window. It didn't die off. You tried saying no, clearly, with eye contact, in your firmest voice. He looked at you. He kept going. You tried quiet, sometimes soft, sometimes loud, sometimes with a hand gesture you saw in a training video. Still nothing. You might have tried the spray bottle, the loud can of coins, maybe a bark collar someone recommended. And maybe just for a few days one of those things seemed to dull the edge of it. And then it came back. And here you are. You've Googled this at 11 p.m. You've read the forum posts. You've watched the short videos that make it look easy. And every morning, the same trigger appears: a person, a dog, a sound from outside, and your dog responds the exact same way. That frustration you feel? That mix of exhaustion and guilt and low-key embarrassment when it happens with company over? That feeling is completely valid. But I want to take something off your shoulders right now. The fact that nothing worked isn't because you're doing it wrong. It's because you've been solving the wrong problem. Why none of it works, the real reason. Here's where everything shifts. Your dog isn't just barking because something is outside. He's barking because he's running a system, one that he didn't design consciously, but one that has been working perfectly from his perspective every single time. Think about what happens when the mail carrier comes. Your dog barks, and then the mail carrier leaves. From your dog's point of view, that's not a coincidence. That's cause and effect. He made the threat go away. He protected the house. He did his job. And the next time a potential threat appears, his nervous system doesn't ask whether barking is a good idea. It goes straight to what worked last time. Every time that sequence completes, the behavior gets reinforced. Not because you rewarded it, not because he's stubborn or untrained, but because the outcome consistently confirmed that barking produces results. This is where the threshold concept becomes crucial. Think of your dog's tolerance for stimulation like a cup. Throughout the day, small things add to it: a squirrel on the fence, a jogger passing the window, a car backfiring down the street. Each one is minor on its own. But if 3 or 4 of those things have already happened by 10 a.m., the cup is already most of the way full. So when the mail carrier arrives at 10:15, your dog doesn't just react to the mail carrier. He reacts to everything that's been accumulating all morning. And the bark that comes out is louder, more urgent, and harder to interrupt than it would have been on a quiet day. That's the mechanism behind why some days feel manageable and other days feel impossible with the exact same triggers. The part about telling them to stop now. Here's the thing that's hard to hear. When you walk over to your barking dog and say quiet, especially if you say it loudly or with frustration, your dog doesn't hear a command. He hears you. Joining in. Dogs don't have a category in their brain for human verbal correction during alarm state. What they have is pattern recognition. And a person raising their voice, moving urgently toward the window, and making repeated vocalizations, looks, and sounds from a dog's perspective like another member of the household, confirming that yes, there is something out there worth barking at. You meant stop. He heard you're right. Keep going. This isn't a failure of training. It's a mismatch in language. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The same thing happens with punishment. A dog barking in territorial or alarm mode has enormous motivation behind that bark. When punishment is layered on top of that motivation without addressing the underlying state, one of two things happens. Either the punishment isn't strong enough to compete with the instinct, and so it does nothing, or it is strong enough to suppress the bark, but it doesn't touch the emotional state driving it. The dog is still in alarm mode. He just can't express it. And that's when you start seeing other behaviors emerge, the kind that are harder to read and more dangerous to ignore. The bark was a signal. Suppressing the signal doesn't put out the fire. What you actually do about it, so, now that you understand the system, here's how you work with it instead of against it. The first thing that changes is when you intervene. The mistake most owners make is waiting until the bark is already happening and then trying to stop it. By that point, your dog is past his threshold. He's flooded. He's not in a state where he can learn anything, and he's not capable of responding to correction. The window for influence isn't during the bark, it's before it. Start watching the moment just before the bark. There will always be one. A stillness, a weight shift, ears forward. His gaze locking onto something outside. That's the moment, that 3-second window where you can redirect. Not with a loud voice, not with urgency. With a calm, clear invitation to do something else. Call him to you. Show him a treat. Ask for a sit. Anything that engages his brain before the alarm state takes over. You're not distracting him away from danger. You're giving his nervous system a different path to follow before it locks into the one it knows. Do this consistently over days and weeks, and something shifts. His response to those triggers begins to include checking in with you rather than going straight to the window. The second adjustment is managing what he has access to. This isn't a long-term solution. It's a reset mechanism. If your dog spends most of his day with a clear line of sight to the street watching everything that passes, running through the bark sequence dozens of times before you even get home, his threshold will stay low. His cup will always be full. And every evening will feel like damage control. Block the sightline temporarily. Not forever. Just enough to reduce how many times per day he runs through the rehearsal. A dog that has barked twice today has a lower baseline than a dog that has barked 42 times. That difference matters when you're trying to teach something new. The third adjustment is what you do after. When he encounters a trigger, a person outside, another dog on the walk, and he doesn't immediately launch into a bark, that moment deserves recognition. Not a party, just a quiet, calm acknowledgement, a treat, your attention, something that tells his nervous system, this is a state worth returning to. You're not rewarding the absence of barking in a vacuum. You're reinforcing the experience of calm exposure to a trigger. Over time, that exposure changes the association. The thing that used to signal alarm begins to signal something else. What changes, and when you'll know it's working, there's going to be a morning maybe 2 weeks from now. Maybe 5, where something appears outside the window and your dog turns to look at it, and then turns to look at you instead. It'll be quick. Maybe he'll even glance back at the window. But that moment, that check-in before the decision, is the thing you've been building toward. That's his nervous system asking, what are we doing here? Instead of defaulting to the only answer it had before. You won't cure every bark. Dogs bark. That's not the goal. The goal is a dog whose response to the world isn't permanently set to alarm, a dog who has enough trust in his own environment and in you to take a breath before he reacts. That dog is in there. He's been doing what he learned worked. Now you're teaching him something different. Before you go, remember that moment I described at the beginning? Standing in your living room, saying quiet, watching it not work. That wasn't a failure. That was you trying with the tools you had. Now you have different ones. Here's what I want you to try this week. Just the first adjustment. Pick one recurring trigger. The window, the front door, the spot where he always locks in. Start watching for the moment before the bark, the stillness, the shift, and the next time you catch it, call him to you calmly before he crosses into the bark. Just that. Give it a week. Then come back to the comments and tell me, did you catch the window? Did it work? What did his face do when you called him? Because the details you notice now, you never would have noticed 2 weeks ago. See you next time.